What's up, geeks and gamers? It's Odin coming back with a box office breakdown for this past weekend, which saw Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 have one of the best holds for an MCU film, especially over the last couple of years, beating out even the holds of the previous Guardians films, which would include even Guardians 1, and we all know that that film got a lot of people interested in those characters, and is one of the reasons as to why Guardians 2 ended up making that much more than the original, even though the second one was not all that good. Even though my own thoughts on this movie are that it's kind of a mixed bag. There's some moments that are kind of good, but then it's also 2.5 hours, and the vast majority of it seems to be typical mindless MCU fare. This is still very, very good, not only for this movie, but also very, very good for the actual franchise itself. And though this film is likely going to come in as the lowest grossing of the entire franchise, the fact that it's going to be outperforming the likes of Thor 4 very, very easily, and even has a pretty good chance, or at least a decent chance, of being able to get upwards of the numbers that were made by Black Panther 2, I think there's a pretty good chance for this movie overall to make its money back and to be able to make a little bit of profit as well. I don't think this is going to change really the trajectory for the MCU going forward, as we have the Eternals, or sorry, not the Eternals, might as well be the Eternals, but we have the Marvels set to come out later this year, and no one's really expecting that film to do much of anything. So still not very good news for Disney overall in the long run, but as I've been saying for a while, if any film had a chance of $1 billion from the MCU anytime soon, this was pretty much the last chance possible. And you'll see in the charting that, though it's theoretically possible, probably not going to actually reach that point simply because of the fact that competition is going to be coming its way as of next weekend. We also have the Super Mario Bros. Movie coming at the number 2 spot this weekend, dropping 30%, a very, very strong hold for that film. In the 6th week of release, the fact that after 6 weeks, the film is still at 3,800 screens is pretty darn impressive. What is interesting, though, is that the numbers coming from Japan really aren't all that surprising or really aren't all that crazy. A lot of people have been saying, oh, Japan, they're going to go gaga for. It's a Nintendo property. It's home field advantage. The film is likely going to cap out somewhere around $100 million. So that sounds like a lot of money. And again, for all of us, of course, it absolutely is. But that means that it's not even going to be in those top movies, right? And that includes even struggling to get past some other Western films that have been released in that country also. So it's going to be doing well. It's looking like probably $100 million is very much on the table for that movie. But I know some people have been thinking maybe 150, 200 million. Really isn't coming to fruition. South Korea is pretty much non-existent as far as the film's release there is concerned, and I think ultimately it comes down to the fact that the delayed release, I think that for Japan, they thought maybe because of the holiday, because of the Golden Week and all that other stuff, that's going to help it. It doesn't really seem to have helped it all that much, though, and I think that delaying it by even just a couple weeks, or not, if not more, is ultimately, I think, a decision that could have cost them quite a bit of money. Right now, the film's looking closer to getting somewhere around $1.3 to $1.4 billion. Previously, I'd said 1.3 to 1.6, dependent upon, of course, doing very well in Japan and in South Korea. I even said I thought the best case scenario for the film, or at least I thought a realistic scenario for the film, if it was doing well in those areas, would be around $250 million with both of them combined. I don't think that's going to be possible at this point in time. We're probably talking less than $200 million when all is combined, and probably not even getting to 150 or that much past 150 with both of them combined together. But again, still early. Those films do tend to act a little differently, or at least those markets tend to act a little differently, but we will follow that continuously. The film is still doing very well, though, here domestically. And they're still not taking anything away from that, still making massive profits. And the fact that the profits that it's made from this movie alone can fund the next 6 or so films, if they spend $100 million on them, means Universal and Nintendo are in a very good position going forward. But I just want, again, important just to mention how a lot of people have been writing on Japan and South Korea being huge numbers for the film box office wise. And it just really hasn't come to fruition at this point in time. We had a new release in Book Club, the next chapter. Apparently people wanted a book club too. But apparently not a whole lot of people, making only $6.5 million here domestically. Number 4 spot went to Evil Dead Rise, again, continuing to add to its overall profits for Warner Brothers, their only real profitable movie in the last few years, it seems, with a 37% hold in its 4th week, so still doing very strong. And from Lionsgate, Are You There, God Is Me, Margaret, having percentage-wise a decent drop, but the numbers overall not all that impressive. But again, big news of today, of course, is Guardians of the Galaxy, $60.5 million, a 49% drop. The previous Guardians films had around a 55% drop. You go back to last year talking about, talking about Doctor Strange, talking about Black Panther, talking about Thor. We had an Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. You had 60% plus. 60 to 80% was that range, right? I think Doctor Strange had a 67% drop. So the fact that this movie's at 49%, yes, we can look and say the overall numbers are not nearly as high as when that film started out, but these types of drops are a very, very good sign. Again, not a lot of competition this week, But hey, Super Mario Brothers also had very strong drops without a lot of competition either, and we see where that film is. I'm not saying that Guardians is going to make the same kind of money, but this film is clearly showing itself to be a pretty formidable force even in the international marketplace. Looking at those numbers, I can see right now it's at $528 million. I thought going into the weekend there was a good chance of it getting to between 450 and 500. It got even more than that with $528 million, and as you can see, quite a big difference in the international versus domestic, about $100 million difference there. So definitely a film can perform a lot better internationally than domestically, but still doing very well. Positive word of mouth has been very good for this, and it shows you the importance of good word of mouth on your movies. Even when it comes to trash franchises like the MCU, that it's still, again, something that's a very powerful tool. And I think Guardians is showing that very fact. It shows also that if Disney were actually going to take fans seriously and try to give films that actually provide entertainment without pushing narratives and not pushing politics, hey, this is the kind of things that you could actually experience, and you probably get even more money if you cut those budgets by quite a bit of money, because you don't need to spend $250 million just production budget alone. Not in addition to the 150 million plus million you're going to be spending on marketing. It just does not really make a lot of sense anymore, especially when it's a 2.5 hour film that could have easily been 2 hours or less. Super Mario Brothers movie is indeed doing still very well, $1.2 billion worldwide. So again, a similar difference, again, about $100 million in the domestic international, doing a little bit stronger in the international market. They have not yet updated the charts here internationally. Again, they will update these individual ones probably come tomorrow. But I do know that Japan's numbers are close to around $60 million or so at this point in time. And so that's why I'm saying it's looking like the film might be able to get to $100 million there. But anything past that, probably not going to end up happening. And then I was saying before about South Korea, if you look at the numbers there, right now it's only been reported as having $13.5 million. So still haven't had 4 days of releases, but did not have a very strong release and has not really had good daily numbers there. And so, again, not really anything showing up, but still enough in many other areas to easily push this film past $1 billion. And looking like 1.3 to 1.4 is in its future. Book Club at $9.6 million. Not a very strong start there. Evil Dead Rise, $131.7 million. Are you there, guys? Me, Margaret. Only have domestic numbers of 16.4, this book adaptation. And then the film Hypnotic from Ben Affleck, or rather starring Ben Affleck. This is from Robert Rodriguez. Really not doing much of anything. And this is really, really bad because the film actually cost quite a bit of money. We'll go ahead and go to the box office charting because we love doing charting here on Geeks and Gamers. So as you can see, $528 million. That means I'm projecting, based off of typical historical trends, even if all of the wheels fall off, right? Even if all the competition is able to just dry up the market worldwide, you're still looking like this film is going to be somewhere, still at minimum, making somewhere around $755 million. All right? So you're looking at a minimum 755. That would put the film just barely over Thor. Now, I don't think it's going to get to 70%. I think it's going to perform a little bit better than that personally. I think it's going to more so act in the way of the average because that word of mouth has been so strong. And so that's why I'm thinking somewhere between $850 and $900 million as an endpoint would make a lot of sense. So I don't think it's going to have enough to double what it's made so far. I don't think it's going to have that, especially with the competition. But I think that Fast 10, though, providing some competition, is not going to be able to take the wheels off completely. So I think $850 to $900 million. So either getting right to where Black Panther ended its run, the Black Panther 2, of course, ended its second run, Black Panther 2 ended its run, or a little bit more than that. As far as profits are concerned, we're looking at the film getting roughly around $100 million in net gain profits when all is said and done. And again, that is using the more conservative estimates there. I know everyone uses a little bit of charting when it comes to those break-even points, but I think what we can absolutely all agree on is this film is doing still very, very well and is likely going to be able to not only make its money back, but also add some profits, which for an MCU film these days is actually much more of a surprise than anything else. At this point in time, it has made about 2.1 times its budget. My break-even's around 2.5, and I think that this film will definitely be able to get to at least 3 times its budget when everything is said and done, which is typically the other standard that other people might use in their charts. For Hypnotic, though, it's not looking very good at $2.3 million at a $65 million budget. Its break-even point's around 162.5. I just don't see it making its money back. Same also can be said for Book Club, The Next Chapter, $50 million break-even point there, starting at 9.6. You know, it's less of a journey to go on versus Hypnotic, but also just really not making all that much. We've seen this consistently throughout the box office over the last year or so, that there are still a lot of films out there where if you don't have a pre-established audience, but also too, if you don't provide a film that's going to be able to branch out past certain demographics, you're going to have a little bit of trouble at the box office because people are a lot more careful with how they spend their money. But those are the numbers of the big films as they currently stand. If you want a fuller box office breakdown of all the other films like John Wick, etc., check out my channel OMB Reviews, where I'll have a full box office breakdown after I finish recording this one. But what are y'all's thoughts about these numbers? Do you think Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is going to end somewhere between 850 and 900 million? Again, history and numbers and math seem to indicate that is going to be the ultimate case. But even worst case scenario, you're still looking at the film getting to that $750 million number, right? And I've heard some people say, for my metrics, it's 625 million, which is the break-even point. For others, it's 700 million. I think that in either case, though, the film is going to make more than that, and it's definitely going to be a much bigger hit than Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, where it's already made more than the entire run of Quantumania, which is still, again, really bad. This is a good sign individually for this movie, but for the MCU overall, it's still not a great sign because Ant-Man and the Wasp is where they set up the new villain, is where they set up this new phase of the MCU. For that to be your film that loses money, right, between $15 and $100 million, depending on what metrics you use, that is a terrible sign. This, again, shows life for the Guardians franchise, but even with all of this stuff, right, even in that best case scenario I was talking about, the most likely scenario of getting to around $900 million, when you adjust for inflation, that still will not be enough to take over the entire total for the first Guardians movie. So you're still looking at a film that's not going to be the highest grossing of the franchise, that did better than what anyone would have expected it to, but ultimately, too, is just not enough to really say that the MCU has turned any corner. But let me know your thoughts about this or anything else I mentioned in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, that fire button, honestly, no matter where you're watching, smash whatever it is. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.